Okay, today I want to talk about a new game I've created. It's called Crazy Robot Factory. It's a solitary game primarily, but it can be played co-op, so you can play 2, 3, up to 4 players. But it works very well as a solitary game. Now, the premise of the game is you own a widget factory, and this widget factory creates robot parts. And you're putting this factory together, and it's all completely robot driven. So you've had it pre-assembled ahead of time, so when you're going to get there, you're like, okay, I'm going to start creating widgets for this robot factory. Problem is, there was a glitch in the program, and your assembly line somehow got completely out of whack. So all your conveyor belts and all your assembly robots just got completely thrown all over the factory floor. And since your widgets are on a pre-programmed production, they're going to start processing, and it doesn't matter where your conveyor belts are. So you've got to now jump in and program your factory robots, which are these little guys, to help you rearrange your factory floor and get things organized so you can actually process your widgets and create your robot parts. So like I said, the name of the game is Crazy Robot Factory, and I'm going to be running through 2 videos. This one's going to talk about the components, a little bit about what each component does, and the assembly of the game and pre-setup. And the second video will be pretty much a game playthrough. It may not be a whole game, but it'll give you a really good idea of how each turn is and how each phase is. So for this one, we'll do, I'm going to talk about the components, then I'll set up a game. So first let's start off with the game board. So the game board it's a grid, 8x8 grid for the main factory floor. This is the dark gray area. And then this hazard line that you see here, this is an area where your robots can't deviate out of this zone. So they have to stay within this 8x8 grid. Now you'll see that there's these 2-digit numbers on each square, and they start with 1-1, go up to 8-8. And what that is you have 2 8-sided dice, and you are going to randomly set up the game where your conveyor belts are and where your assembly robots go. Since there was that glitch and everything is all over the place, that will set up the game for this random assortment of placement of your conveyor belts. You also have a turn tracker, so as either solitary game or as a co-op, you're going to see how many turns it takes you to either accomplish the goal, which will be to process your widgets into factory robot parts, or whether you lose all the factory robot parts by having them fall on the ground and becoming destroyed because they're highly delicate robot parts. You have this turn tracker, so you have that on the start, and you have a clockwise starting with 1 going up to turn 35. So that's the game board. Then you have your factory floor robot programming cards. Now, on a solitary game, you're going to have 2 robot programming cards and 1 factory assembly arm. And I'll explain that later. But if you were playing a 2-player game, each person could control a factory programming card, and if it was 3 or 4, you'd have 2 more of these cards, plus for a 4-player game, you'd have another factory assembly arm. So for right now, in a single-player or 2-player game, you have 1 arm and 2 programming cards. So the way these programming cards work, you have your corresponding robot that goes with that programming card. So you have the blue and the orange. And you have your 9 programming cubes. And the way it works is each turn there's 9 actions, 9 programming actions. And after the 9th action, your conveyor belt system makes a move. And you can kind of think of it as you're programming your robot really quickly as your conveyor belt's starting to move. So after your 9th action, they're very quick programming actions. Your conveyor belt's moving, and widgets are moving along. So you're going to be programming your factory floor robot to move conveyor belts around the factory floor to get them lined up to actually process the widgets. So you have these number of actions. You have pause, you have move up, move down, move right, move left. Then you have a pickup action, which means your robot comes along. And you have to think of these as little small robots. They can move under all these conveyor belts. They move underneath, and then you could do an action to pick up, and it would pick up the conveyor belt. Now you could rotate it, which means you could have this conveyor belt rotate in the direction you need, or you release it and then you plop it back down on the factory floor. So these are actions you program, such as you're going to move your robot up, you're going to pick up a conveyor belt, and then you're going to rotate it. Those would be 3 actions you would perform. And then your robot would go through those actions. But now since there's 2 robots, you have to program both of them at the same time. So this one might move up, it might move to the right, and then it might move another one to the right. So you start your robots, right? And it might be something like this. As an example, you would move this guy up, this guy would move up, and then this guy would, let's move him right here. So move up, then you pick up the conveyor belt. This is just a very quick example. This guy would move to the right, then he would perform the rotate, and he would rotate this one, and then you'd move over to the right. And you have to remember that both robots are moving at the same time, so you have to program them together, and you have to be aware where they are on the factory floor at all times, because if these robots ever run into each other, they instantly stop and reboot, and it takes the whole 9 phases actions to reboot. So you lose a lot of time if you get these robots to make contact with each other. So these guys are delicate too, and you're going to be programming. So now you'll see that you have 3 actions that you programmed. And then right after that 3rd action, you see robot arm. So what that is in the game, your robot arm will always have 4 tiles. And when you pull them out just like you place them. You can't rotate them, you can't adjust them. You just place them on the card. So when you see this robot arm action, you get to take this tile, but you can't change the orientation. It has to come out like this, and you can put it anywhere on the factory floor that you want, that you think it will help out. Once it's on the floor, you need a robot to move it and rotate it. So you've placed your conveyor belt with your assembly arm. Now you take all these other ones and they kind of go down a chute. You take another one, place it on, and then it's ready for the next assembly arm drop. So then you would program, let's say you do some programming for your robots, right? Then you get to the next robot arm. So you can come here, take this next conveyor belt, place it where you want. It might be like this. These all shift again. Grab another one, place it down. And so that is the robot arm action. You have this factory assembly arm. It holds 4, and it's a long chute of conveyor belts, but they always come down and you always take from the first slot. And they only happens during that robot arm action. There's only 2 of those during this 9 programming phase. So that's the programming cards. And like I said, you will program 9 actions. Just like this one, we'll program 9 actions. They could be anything, but as long as they're within those 8 programmable codes that you can use. And then once you've gotten to the 9th program action, that's the end of the phase, and that is when your conveyor belt starts to move. And think of all your conveyor belts, they're functioning wireless, so they're all, even though they may not be attached and they may be anywhere on the floor, they all move. And at that 9th phase, they all make one movement. So you might have a conveyor belt here and here, and there might be a widget on it, whenever you hit that 9th action and that finishes that program phase, all conveyor belts that have a widget on it, one of these cubes, moves in the arrow 1 space. Now, the problem is, if you don't have this set up, if you haven't gotten it correctly in the right place, when that thing moves, it falls off the conveyor belt. Then it's destroyed. If anything falls off, if a widget ever falls off a conveyor belt and hits the floor, it's destroyed. It's taken from the game. And that's part of the winning conditions. If you destroy more than half of your widgets, your robot parts, you lose the game. So it's very critical that you quickly as possible get your conveyor belt set up. Now, what are we doing with these conveyor belts? So that's where you have a start conveyor belt and a complete conveyor belt. And quickly, you'll basically roll 2 dice. You'll have your complete there. You'll go to 6 here. And those are your starting places for your start and your complete. Now you have to process your widgets from here, go through your conveyor belt system, go through your assembly robots, and then end as a final robot part on the complete conveyor belt. Now the way that works is you have assembly robots, and there's a lot of different assembly robots I've created, but for the very basic game you have these 2. Right? And you'll see that they have a colored cube on the left side of the equal and a colored cube on the right side of the equal. What that means is you're going to start with a yellow, and when that yellow gets to this robot, it can process it, and it processes it into a new part, which is now an orange cube. Then it has to get itself over to this robot, this assembly robot. It will now take in this orange cube, process it, and it becomes a green cube. This green cube is what has to complete, which has to make its way to the complete conveyor belt to win the game. Now you'll see that it has, you might not be able to see on the video, but on this it has some hazard lines, this black and yellow hazard tape lines, and then it has the color of the cubes plus arrows directing either in or out. If it has the cube with an arrow in, that means when there's a straight conveyor belt, and it can only be a straight conveyor belt, it will take a cube, an orange. When it gets next to that, it will take it in, and then you better have another factory conveyor belt, and it needs to be a straight one on this side, and it will process that orange into a green. So it grabs the orange, processes it, places it back on another conveyor belt through this direction, and then on it goes, following the arrows. So that's where you have your paths. So you'll need conveyor belt like that. You may need one like this. So every turn, when you finish your 9th programming action, it moves to the next conveyor belt, and then to the next conveyor belt, and it has to end up on that complete. And the situation is you need to try and process all 8 of these, green, for the beginner game, all green widgets to win the game, or as many as possible. You have to at least make more than half, so you gotta process at least 5 of them. But you'll see that the robots, they start with a yellow, they process into an orange, and then from the orange, process to a green. So we have these assembly robots, and for the beginning game we have 2. You have your start and your complete conveyor belts. You have your widgets, which you'll always start with 8 for each type of widget. And then you have your 9 programming cubes. These are programming actions for each factory floor assembly robot, or factory floor robot. And your 2 dice. These will only be used in the very beginning. Once that, you never use the dice anymore. So, and then all your assembly, or your, excuse me, conveyor belts will be in either a bag or a cup, something you can randomly take from. So these are your components for the beginning game, and that's what I'm going to be doing a walkthrough, is the beginning game. Alright, so that's kind of the actions you follow, and it's, like I said, once you get through your 9 actions and the conveyor belt starts moving, you're on to your next turn. You'll program your robots, you get to that 9th one, the conveyor belt moves, and you're on to your next one. That's your turn tracker. Each phase is 9 actions. That's a turn. Okay? So, let's go ahead and to end this video, we're going to set up the game board for the beginning level play. It's a solitary game. First things first, let's place the start and complete conveyor belts. So we use that one for the top and this one for the bottom. Start is always on the bottom, so we go on the 3 column, and we'll place this complete on the 2. Okay, so that's for that one. Now the next thing is you need to place the 2 assembly robots, and same process. So I've got 2 color dice. The gold dice will be the first number, the blue will be the second number. So we just roll this twice, and we'll place these down. Remember, these are going to be same thing. You kind of pull these out random, and you can shuffle them up like this. Just kind of flip them around, get them rotated so you don't know where they're at, and then roll your dice. So we have 72. So we'll take this, just flip it, and that is the orientation it's going to stay, and it will go on 72. Now the big thing about the assembly robots is they cannot start in this outer border. Okay? They have to be within the 2. Anything that shows with a 1 or an 8, you have to re-roll. So we've got 7-2, 7-3. Now that we'll have to re-roll because you have to have that open. So we have 1 and 8, can't do that. And we have 6 and 6. So 6 and 6 will be right here. Now once these are placed, assembly robots cannot be moved. Factory floor robots can only move conveyor belts. These are stationed and permanent. Okay? So it makes it trickier to figure out your route for your conveyor belt. Now, to finish up the initial setup of the game board, you are going to roll for 14 conveyor belts. Okay, so yes, you gotta roll this 14 times, but it goes pretty quick. So we got 7 and 7. Just draw one out, place it. There we go. 6 and 2. Pull one out, and there it is. We got 2 and 7. Place it out. 2 and 7. 1 and 6. 7 and 8. 5 and 7. Let's see, 3 and 7. 5 and 8. And I don't know, I think this is the fun part. It's, you know, I don't see this as painful, so place that there. This is from 3. 8 and 3. Put that there. 1 and 8. Put that there. 4 and 7. 4 and 7. 7 and 7. What do I got from there? So roll again. 6 and 8. There we go. So we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So we have 2 more. And then we got 1 and 8. Where I got that one. 4 and 8. 4 and 8. Got that one there. And 3 and 7. Oh, got that one. 2 and 7. Oh, did that one. 1 and 3. There we go. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. All right, so we've got our factory floor set up. Just draw 4 for the arm. Just place them out as you get them. One more. And remember, on the factory assembly arm, once they're placed that way, they have to stay in their orientation. You can put them anywhere you want, but they have to stay in orientation. Remember, also, when you take an arm from the factory assembly arm, you cannot put a conveyor belt on top of another conveyor belt or on top of an assembly robot. It has to go into an empty space. Okay, so we've got our factory assembly arm set up, we've got our cubes, we've got our 2 robots. Now, the robots, before you start the game, so you don't need the dice anymore, the robot, your factory floor robots, can start on any one of these border spaces. But once they're inside the factory floor, that's it. They have to stay within this hazard border. It has a line and a sensor, and it knows that once it gets to that line, it won't let it out. So that means it can pick up a conveyor belt, but it can't take it out of this border. It has to stay within this grid. So you kind of have to play this mind game of, it's like a shuffle puzzle. You have to move conveyor belts around. You can't move conveyor belts into other conveyor belts. It won't work. So if you're trying to move, like if you want to move this here, a robot has to pick it up, move it here, let it go, and then pick this one up and move it here, because it cannot hit another one. And you gotta, like I said, make sure that your robots do not hit each other, or you're gonna be in a serious problem. Then we have your situation where the factory floor robots, like they said, they can move anywhere they want, they just can't move through the assembly robots. So you can move under all these, you can program it to move around all these, pick one up, rotate it, drop it, pick up another one, rotate, drop it. But once you pick it up, it cannot move into another space that already has a conveyor belt. So the challenge of the game is, 1, you have your initial widget, right? Those will start here, and you place 1 on the start, right? And you, before your 9th action is over, you better get a conveyor belt next to the start, or it's going to start it, and you're going to lose that first widget. So your challenge is to figure out a path to go to this robot, which will process a yellow widget to an orange one, then take that orange to this assembly robot, process it into a green, and then get that widget over to the complete. You can use any path you want, and you can even, as conveyor belts are moving, you can even move a conveyor belt that has a widget on it, but you better have it placed down and next to another conveyor belt before that 9th action, or it's going to drop it on the factory floor. So after that 9th action, and for example, if you had this right here, the 9th action would finish, and your conveyor belt will start moving, and then the next one gets to start. And then on the next turn, it would go, and here's the problem. So let's say you didn't get this moved before the 9th action. If it hits to here, it hits this and damages, because it's not a possible route. So think of it as, this hits this, destroys it, because it hit this mechanism, and ended up falling on the floor. So this would be taken out, this would move, and then that would be the next one. So you better get this one moved out of the way and get another possible route for a conveyor belt before this next 9th action and it starts to move. So, like I said, your factory floor boats can pick these up, even if they have widgets on them, move them around and place them back down, because you could have widgets on any of these, and since they're all wireless and they're all attached and synced together, once that 9th action goes, all conveyor belts are moving. So they all would move 1. That would be damaged, go to the next one. This would fall off, be damaged, go to start. So just think of them all linked together. So we'll assume that's the setup. You've got your 8 widgets ready to start with. Place your 1 on the start. Like I said, the winning conditions of the game is you have two assembly robots that process widgets. The first one takes the yellow, processes it into orange. Then from orange, you need to get it to this assembly robot through the conveyor belt system, where it will take that orange and process it into green. Once it's processed to green, all of these greens, just like all these oranges, you've got to get each one of those, or as many as you can, at least 5 greens, to the complete conveyor belt to win the game. And then not only do you win, you want to see how little turns it takes you to do that. Okay? So that's where the intensity of this game becomes, is you are having to program 2 robots that are moving simultaneously. You must make sure that they don't run into each other, and program enough of these